What if the future of global education doesn't live in the West, but right here on the African continent? What if the narrative we've been told about Africa is just a fraction of the full story? One filled with innovation, culture, opportunity, and untapped brilliance.
The next global workforce undoubtedly is going to be from the African continent. I am very interested in finding ways to develop programs that keep the young people here, but give them access to the same learning opportunities through virtual programming and so much else.
On today's episode, we sit down with a man who isn't just asking those questions, he's answering them with action.
We had 3 college presidents, 7 administrators that came from multiple colleges to learn about opportunities for collaboration and joint research, curriculum development. So I took them to whole technical.
Someone says that Africa isn't a place to study abroad.
I encourage them to travel and see.
Phil Agbeko is the global strategist, a change maker, and the visionary behind Hilltop Global Group, a company that's bringing students and faculty from across the world to Africa, not just to visit, but to learn, build, and belong. From the World Bank to Fortune 500 boardrooms, from Ghana to South Africa, and now as a Fullbright Specialist appointed by the US State Department. Phil's mission is clear: shape the African narrative and show the world what the continent really has to offer.
Ghana is not Dirty December. Come to Ghana, come at a different time, come with intention, maybe on a short program, maybe on an internship program, or even just a study abroad program. Organizations that value having a quality workforce need to pay close attention to the African continent.
If you've ever dreamed of coming back, investing in the continent, or just reconnecting with your roots, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Phil, you've lived and worked abroad,
Yes.
in the US, across Africa. What makes you keep coming back to Africa?
So Africa is home. A lot of people say Africa is the future, but I say Africa is now. You know, most people think about Africa as some distant entity, but I see so much promise, so much opportunity that I'm drawn by just the vibrancy of the youth, most importantly, and just the grit, entrepreneurial grit. I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I can see so much promise, which is why I keep coming back.
What was the moment that sparked you to say, look, I need to do something back home? When was that moment?
So funny enough, it's always been a thing for me. So I actually always dreamt of being a diplomat.
Oh, really?
When I was growing up, I always thought I'd be.
It's because your dad.
My dad was in that line of work, more or less, and so I was always drawn to that. But my first job was actually with the World Bank.
Okay.
And I was working in Southern Africa, in Namibia specifically. So I thought that I would always be working with the African continent. So it wasn't even a thing where I wasn't going to be engaged on the continent. But then I relocated to the States 2.5 decades ago.
Okay.
And I didn't do anything with Africa directly. And then an opportunity came through Hilltop, which I'm sure we'll get into, which kind of brought me back full circle.
Okay. No, so let's talk about Hilltop. What made you start Hilltop? The education space, you know, doing all of the things that you're currently doing. What made you start that?
So I guess you can say Hilltop was a bit of an accident, a beautiful accident, by the way. So I went to business school at Georgetown University in DC, and while in business school, my goal was to come out of business school and set up a consulting company of some sort, focused on Africa, but it wasn't on education. But we had an opportunity for a study abroad with my classmates, the cohort of about 55. In the group were three Africans, myself, a Nigerian, and a Kenyan.
Okay.
And what we quickly noticed was that study abroad was, first of all, a very big business, and it was a big it was something that happened across all US universities. Right. It actually wasn't optional for most universities. And so we also looked at the options that we had for our study abroad, and most of it was Europe and Asia and Latin America.
Nothing on Africa.
Nothing on Africa. So we looked at each other. I mean, we had great experiences. We went to Turkey as a group, and then a subgroup, and I went to Hong Kong, to Vietnam. Others went all over Asia. And so when we came back, we immediately decided we had to do something about, showcasing the African continent, and that's really how Hilltop was born, quite by accident.
Okay. With your experience of working in Africa, in the US, how has that shaped you personally to be able to do the things that you do on the continent?
It's a good question. I think what that does is it gives me a dual lens. I'm able to see from both sides and also able to appreciate some of the stereotypes even, because a lot of times people are apprehensive about traveling to the African continent, especially in the line of work that I do. So I am very sensitive to that, and I try to provide as much information to those that are considering programs to make sure that they feel comfortable, and we guide them throughout the process. So I have that very unique perspective of really having the knowledge of both sides and being that bridge that connects the two. Right.
And when you've brought people down, what has been the perception when they come down to Africa for the first time?
So sadly, most times it's usually not positive. Most of the perceptions are quite negative, and that's unfortunately what they see in the media. Right. So Africa is portrayed as this place of need and poverty and disease and trouble. So we try to counter that narrative through our programming. And I look at two things. I see you have some books here. So we have two bookends that we use to kind of judge our program success. Okay. So the first is when we have an orientation before they come, where there's so many questions, everybody's so anxious about going, am I going to be safe? Can I drink the water? And all of these types of questions. And then the second bookend for us is the end of the program, where we usually would have some kind of a farewell event. Okay. At that point, there's an almost 360 transformation for every single student, because we are very intentional about the programs that we curate, where we take them to align with their academic areas of focus, but at the same time, injecting key elements of history, culture, and even some unpleasant experiences on purpose, so that they can appreciate, what they have. And 9 out of 10, most people go back totally transformed and wanting to come back. That's amazing. Yeah. You mentioned that, sometimes they're scared about, the water that they're going to drink. What has been the majority of concerns like that people keep raising whenever you mention coming to Africa? So sadly, the biggest concern that most people raise is safety. Okay. And again, that's from misperceptions and miscommunication. And
Africa is more safe than
it is. And so I have a very simple answer to that, because I might be talking to a student in DC or in Chicago or somewhere, and they're concerned about safety. So I always say one thing, and my team does as well, is you will never be shot by a random stranger just about anywhere on the continent. And usually that gets people quiet. But I also provide reassurance that Ghana, Africa is very safe. I mean, yes, you may have, like anywhere else, petty crimes, pickpocketing and things like that. But in general, very, very safe. Why do you think that Africa is misunderstood? What is the real story that people really need to hear about the continent? So I think that Africa doesn't really need a new story. Okay. The truth needs to be amplified, which is why I do what I do. Africa doesn't need a new story. We need a louder mic, essentially, because the story has been told through so many unfortunately dishonest and biased perspectives that most people latch on to what they've heard or seen about the disease, and most times they don't show the full picture. Right. So we try to show the entirety of the continent. We don't try to hide the things that may be considered unpleasant or different from what they are. We like to show the full picture. But the most important thing is that we like to tell the story on our own terms. Right. And I think that makes it different. It's authentic, coming from a group of Africans. My entire team is African primarily. And so we're telling the story from a place of authority, from a place of authenticity. And so that's usually very well received, in our programming. So if someone says that Africa isn't a place to study abroad, what would your response be? I encourage them to travel and see. In fact, we've been doing a lot of what we call site visits, primarily for faculty and administrators and decision makers.
So the heads, so that they can have a look. Okay.
Yes, because it's very, very difficult to compete against Europe, Asia, because most students are locked in on those destinations. And there's a term that's used in the States which kind of irks me a lot. When they talk about places like Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, anywhere else, they talk about non-traditional destinations. Like, what is non-traditional about our destinations?
Right.
You know, so it's just a lack of information, really, for the most part. And my team and our job is to really disrupt those negative stereotypes and show the beauty, complexity of the continent and all the promise that it has.
That's amazing. So you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yes.
Tell us about, Hilltop Global, the work that you've doing, the impact that you're making. 10 years, and you're not just in Ghana.
Yes.
You know, we're in Ghana right now, but you are in Kenya, South Africa, Rwanda, and you're doing this work. Tell us about the journey.
It's been a tough journey, but we've persisted because we believe in what we're doing. We believe that we're making a difference, we're making an impact. We're telling the story, as I mentioned, on our own terms, and it's starting to stick, it's starting to resonate. And, I do a lot of speaking engagements across the U.S., mainly at conferences. I participate in many conferences, usually in the area of academia.
Right.
And the work has evolved since we started because people are starting to pay attention, because I've also been very consistent with my message. It's a very simple message. It's why not Africa? And depending on the audience, I tell the story differently, but it's always the same. You would almost always see me in those events dressed like I am now. And it's a brand. Hilltop is a brand. Me positioning Africa as a brand, I think people want to believe what they're seeing, what they're hearing. And so I've become the face of Hilltop. I'm the ambassador for the African continent through my programming. And, we've had a lot of successes. We've also had to adjust our programming. Our traditional model is the short-term study abroad, which is generally about maybe a week to 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks. The longest will be 3 weeks for most institutions, but we've also started doing internships. So we have a month-long internship
for people from the US to come to Africa.
Right now the internships are only in Ghana for now, but we're looking at a Pan-African model where we'll run internships across the continent. Students are placed in different companies based on their industry or their areas of interest on a predefined project with a deliverable at the end of 1 month. So it's not a do-nothing project where you come sit in the office for a month and go back. We're looking for, meaningful contributions to the companies that are hosting them. We're also addressing the stereotypes head on, not through the site visits only, but we're doing faculty development workshops. So we're bringing faculty from different institutions to partner with their peers here. The most successful we've had so far was with one of my clients, Emerson College out of Boston. And then that's the top film school, top communications university, which we should talk about that. And we partnered them with Unimac. So we had 5 faculty from Emerson and 5 from Unimac, and we spent 10 days where they worked together to identify areas of collaboration. Some are looking at joint curriculum development. We had one person that was an actor and a professor on that side. And then here we had my brother Ajete who is also an actor, and he teaches at NAFTI. And so they were partnered up, and then everybody else was partnered with someone who was similar in expertise. And it was an amazing 10 days of collaboration, and so much has come out of that, and it's still evolving.
That's amazing. When you talk about why not Africa, what are you telling them in the conference room about why not Africa? Because it seems that we're still having to explain ourselves about why Africa, right? And so what is your pitch? What is your secret weapon, I would say, that you're saying to these people?
Yeah. So I've had different angles, but I've kind of landed on the global workforce, and I'll tell you why. Everybody talks about the youthful population, we're the youngest continent, but nobody really talks about what that means in terms of the next global workforce.
Right.
And so that's the angle that I talk about, why not Africa? Because if you look at what COVID did, the impact COVID had, everybody went to global, remote work, outsourcing models. A lot of the outsourcing that was happening in India and other places, a lot of that is shifting to the African continent because we have the talent, we have the capabilities. So that's sort of the angle. The next global workforce undoubtedly is going to be from the African continent. So institutions that, or organizations that, value having a quality workforce need to pay close attention to the African continent. Next global workforce is from the African continent. No questions there, and that's kind of how I pitch. Why not Africa? A lot of times with institutions in the U.S., when it comes to programming or just engagement, most think about a recruitment pipeline. We look at, let's recruit students to come study in our universities, which is all well and good, but we also know that contributes to the brain drain, to a great extent. So I am very interested in finding ways to develop programs that keep the young people here, but give them access to the same opportunities.
To the global
learning opportunities through virtual programming and so much else. But as Africa,
are we taking advantage of that? I mean, when you look at India, a lot of the BPOs, a lot of the businesses, call centers are in India, right? And sometimes you can't even understand what they're saying because Ghana, we have good English, right? And so why is it that we're not getting these type of businesses on the continent, like call centers?
Yeah, it's a number of things. One is just the infrastructure, right? I don't think there's that many companies that, I think there's a couple that I know of that have the infrastructure and the support to house agents that can support institutions. That's the biggest thing, I think, and I think the more that we have, and I don't think there's also enough of a track record, because to attract large companies that would be willing to, invest in outsourcing, you have to have some you have to have a proven track record before you can attract, the caliber of company. You may get a few small ones, but if you really want to scale, then you need some big players to vet, to vouch for you rather. So,
sometimes on the continent we get boxed as one country. We get boxed as one country. You haven't worked in Rwanda, South Africa, Kenya. What differences do you see in these other countries?
A lot. So that's one of the stereotypes that I fight or I push back on in all of my interactions. I always say Africa is not a monolithic entity. Even within one country, there's so much diversity in the different tribes, the different areas, and the cultural nuances across different countries. There's work ethics that differ across different countries. There's just so much beauty, so much complexity, and most times you just have to be open to seeing and not looking at it as one entity.
Can you give us an example of a success story from one of your students that came to Africa and the impact that it made on their life?
Well, this one was an interesting one because sometimes you don't realize people watch you. There's several, but I'll just talk about this story because there was a group of, I think, about 16 or 17 students, and there was one boy, one guy. So 18, 19, however old he was. And they went through the program for about 2 to 3 weeks. And at the end, they were supposed to do a presentation of their work. They had gone out, done documentaries, they were supposed to film. And 2 days before, the boy came to me and said, Mr. Phil, can you help me find something to wear for this event? I'd like to wear something like you're wearing.
Wow.
I didn't realize he had been watching and observing. So I called my tailor quickly, had him measured. Tailor made him a nice two-piece. I'll share the picture at some point. And I bought him a pair of sandals, made in Ghana sandals. And if I tell you the swag and the pride in that young man and the confidence that I saw in him, and he told me, I've never had custom clothing ever made for me before. I've never worn custom clothing. And he felt so good. There's been many other stories of students who have looked at a career pivot. Some were looking at doing work in finance. Some are looking at international development. Several stories across our student population that we work with.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. Tell us about your recent trip and the types of universities that you're working with in Ghana, in America, and the bridges that you are building.
Yes, so this was the Tennessee Consortium of International Studies. We had 3 college presidents, 7 administrators that came from multiple colleges to learn about opportunities for collaboration in joint research, curriculum development. So I took them to Whole Technical, which is an institution that I collaborate with. And we had extensive sessions with different faculty exploring areas of collaboration. But the week was also about exposing them to the culture, exposing them to what a typical program might look like for their students. So they go back better informed, and they went back absolutely blown away by the experiences. Of course, we did the Cape Coast Castle, St. Manso, and a few other sites.
So there's a tour aspect to it. It's not just the coming to the learning exchange, but immersing themselves with the cultural activities that happen in Ghana as well.
Very much so, because that provides context. It's not just about the business side of things, but I do want. It's a good point you raised, because I want to qualify that Hilltop is not a tour company. Hilltop is an education consulting company. We provide educational programs with an element of tours and cultural experiences. It's a big distinction. Sometimes you get lumped into tour company, and the value of what we do is diminished. But we're very heavy on the academic side. So that was the first program with the Tennessee Consortium. And then shortly after, I had a group of almost 30 students from Imperial College of London that were here with faculty. Their program was business focused, so they're from the business school, and the theme was on environment and sustainability. So we had worked with Jospon Group and also Cosmos Innovation Center to design some projects for them to work on, which was sort of like a hackathon, a short case study for the students to present solutions based on their recommendations, which went extremely well. And then I had a third group in town at the same time from NYU, New York University, of about 15 students that were here from different academic disciplines. So also again, exposure to the culture, the business environment, the innovation ecosystem, and also a visit to NYU Accra. So that's this month alone. It's been quite hectic, but thankfully everything went well, and we're done for this month, but we're back with more programming next month, actually.
Next month. Wow, a lot of work.
Yes, quite so.
So you've just been named a Fullbright Specialist.
Yes.
First of all, what does that mean, and how does that align to your mission?
Great question. So the Fulbright is a very globally recognized fellowship, if you can call it that. It's issued by the U.S. State Department, and it's very competitive. The Fulbright program in general is very competitive. So there are different layers to it. There's the Fulbright Scholar, and then there's a student component. But the specialist is sort of more of an expert consultant. So my Fulbright designation, specialist designation, is in global education. And what that does is it kind of validates the individual, such as myself, as an expert in global education.
Amazing.
Which is something that universities and institutions are drawn to. And the Fulbright program is aimed at building bridges. across continents. It's been around for a very long time. I don't remember exactly how many years, but it's, I think, in over 100 and something countries.
Wow.
I was fortunate to have my Fulbright project here in Ghana.
Okay.
And that was with Whole Technical University. Okay. And the nice thing about the Fullbrite Specialist program is that you're an expert on a roster, and then there's options for projects around the world that you can participate in your area of expertise.
Okay.
Of course, again, mine is in global education. So even though I'm finished with my actual project for Whole Technical, which was a 3.5-week project, I spent the time in Whole with the university, sort of a deep dive into the institution as a whole, identifying sort of gaps in resources, capacity, and then my project, which we co-created, was to identify institutional partners on the US side that can help fill those gaps.
Okay.
And so the Fulbright program also encourages specialists to continue their engagements with the host institutions, which I was fortunate to do almost immediately with the Tennessee group.
Okay.
Because when they came, I said, this wasn't part of the program, but we're going to Whole.
Wow.
And that was a phenomenal experience. And out of that, there's so much more that's coming, especially in the area of technical and vocational training, because I work with a lot of community colleges in the US.
Okay.
And several of my partners and clients have an interest in internationalizing their curriculum. I'm trying to shift most of those from Europe, Asia to programs in Africa. Okay. So I expect a lot of traffic and movement in the next year or so, specifically with community colleges across the US. Yeah.
So how do people, so there could be, some university deans that are watching right now from the US that might be interested in sending some of their students. How do they get in touch with you? How do they be part of what you're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, the best way would be to contact me or the company through our website. We have a very active LinkedIn page.
Okay.
It's Hilltop Globally. Actually, Hilltop Globally on all social platforms. LinkedIn is the most active. We're always willing to, meet and discuss their needs and requirements. And the one thing I want to say is that we provide bespoke programming. So no two programs are the same. Okay. We don't do a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter type of programming. Right. Because I think that has very little. Anybody can put together an itinerary and a tour or visits to companies, but we look at the academic and pedagogical requirements of the institutions and then work with them to
tailor it, right?
To tailor it, co-create a program that fits those pedagogical needs and the outcomes that they're looking for. And then we do the full implementation and execution. So it's very, very white glove. It's end-to-end, it's turnkey, and it includes the academic component, the cultural, logistics, in-country, all in one service package.
Yeah. I know when we were talking, we were saying that, there's about, 6,000 universities in America, and you haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Barely. Yes.
In terms of the universities that you want to work with, so there's a lot of work to be done.
Very much so.
And so, in terms of your company, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Definitely scaling across the continent. Now we're in about 6 countries. We're looking to do more. Part of the challenge is that some universities don't look at some destinations at all for safety reasons. And so for now we're focusing on the destinations that most are comfortable with. Yeah. But hopefully with some outliers that would try new destinations, like we're looking at programming in Zambia at some point, Tanzania and many other places. The goal is to scale, to have, and then also in the north, Tunisia, Morocco is where we haven't done anything yet, Egypt as well.
All right.
So to have a truly Pan-African, globally, significant educational programming, but our focus is on the continent. And also we're trying to sensitize most of the institutions, not just about the youthful population, but we also, most people don't know about the AFCFTA, for example. and the potential impact it has on global trade and global business.
Yeah.
So that's another element of why not Africa. When I talk about why not Africa, it's like, here are the reasons why you should really take this seriously and have a truly inclusive global immersion, not only focused on Europe and Asia.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I always say to people is that, you know, the Western world has already been built, right? There's an opportunity for us in the continent here. What do you see when you come, the opportunities that you see here on the continent that people can tap into?
So when I come, I see promise. Most people see challenges, but all around you, I see nothing but opportunities. And for me, the biggest opportunity is the people, the youth. I work with a lot of young people in incubators. I mean, there's companies like one of my partner institutions, Cosmos Innovation Center, that incubates young startups in the agro-tech space. So they provide seed funding for companies that have innovative solutions in agriculture to deal with food security and those types of things. But that's just one element. You have young people coming up with solutions in fintech, healthcare technology. It's just green for innovation. What is lacking sometimes is just access to those resources to be able to innovate. But I also recently visited the Google lab in Accra.
Okay.
And I was blown away by the research and innovation that's taking place right here in Accra. So the opportunities are endless. And for the young people that are driving that innovation, all they need, they don't need a handout. They just need the environment and the ecosystem where they can innovate and come up with these solutions without too much hindrances.
Yeah. So what would your advice be to the youth in America, in the US, in the UK, that are watching this and are thinking, okay, do I do something back on the continent? How do I go about it? What would your advice be to them?
Well, first I'll say Ghana is not Dirty December. Come to Ghana, not in December, but come at a different time. Come with intention. Come maybe on a short program, maybe on an internship program, or even just a study abroad program, or come with friends with intent to learn about, if you're studying finance, for example, just come as a group to learn about the financial services sector. Talk to some experts, learn about sort of the things that are happening in your industry, in your area of interest. Right. Secondly, put away any negative stereotypes. Come with an open mind, because when you come with those negative perceptions, you're going to almost talk yourself out of the opportunities that are everywhere in front of you. So that's one of the things I always say to all of our students is, have an open mind. It will be radically different from what you know, but embrace it, and you walk away a better person at the end. So that would be my advice to the young people. Show up. First of all, just show up and show up with intent.
It's fantastic. I have a few questions, short, sweet questions for you. So if you had to put something up on a billboard on Times Square, on a message on Africa, what would your message be?
I think I may have hinted at that earlier, but I'll say that Africa doesn't need a new story. It needs a louder mic.
So Africa doesn't need a new story. It needs a louder mic. Would that be what's on your billboard?
Yes, I would say that. Okay. We just need a louder mic to tell our story.
Okay, I love that. Yeah. I love that. Okay, what's one stereotype about Africa that drives you crazy, and what's the truth?
One I alluded to earlier, which is just looking at Africa as a monolith.
Okay.
You know, people talk about Africa as one entity. And again, that drives me crazy because we all know that's not true. There's so much, I talked about that earlier, a lot of diversity, cultural differences, diversity in our food and our dances and our clothes. And that really drives me crazy because we all get lumped into this one bucket, which is not the case.
Okay, finish this sentence. And the future of education is?
Immersive, global, and should include Africa.
Okay. What's the one thing about Africa culture the world really needs to experience?
I think it's our warmth, our hospitality for sure. And I think that, in many parts of the world, any interaction is often very transactional. It's like, but here you walk on the street, everybody's saying hello to you.
Yeah.
It's just that warmth and hospitality, especially in Ghana, that I think the world needs to experience, because there's just so much going on in the world now. And
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And I think that warmth and hospitality, and mind you, this is in an environment where everything isn't readily available. You may not have, electricity, you may not have running water, but there's still that warmth everywhere you go. I think that is a lesson that everyone needs to experience.
Absolutely. And lastly, what does shaping the African narrative mean to you personally?
To me personally, that also happens to be our tagline. Our mission statement at Hilltop is shaping the African narrative through experiential learning. That's the full. And for me, it means telling the story on our own terms, in a non-threatening way, in a very organic way through the programs, let's say through experiential learning. So we're very intentional in where we take students, who we have them meet, why we have them meet those people. It's all very, very calculated because those are experiences. Africa is complex. You can't teach that in a notebook. It's very, very layered from one country to the next, even within one country. So we're very, very intentional in placing them in situations where they might sometimes be uncomfortable, but usually through the experience, there is some transformation. And for me, that is what shaping the African narrative means, is taking control of our story and showcasing that to the world.
Taking control of our story and shaping it to the rest of the world. And I think that is so powerful. We talk about the continent all the time, and I'm always going to say this: you need to come back home. Come back home, come and experience and come and have that connection, right, that you've lost. Some of you have moved out from the continent for many years and you haven't been back. For 40 years, you're still there. It's time for you to come back. Some of you have never stepped your foot on the continent, don't even have a passport. So get your passport and make sure that you visit Africa and let Ghana be the country that you visit first, because it's the one for beginners. It was the soft landing for you to come on the continent. So thank you so much, Phil, for joining me on the show today. Thank you for joining me on the Diaspora Conversation podcast. I will see you next time. Thank you.